broken the silence.
No spin, no propaganda, just deep insights and fearless conversations on the geopolitics shaping our world.
People who will call and start telling you about the Bible prophecy about America and everything. See, America is not in the Bible.
There's some people who, yes, they share the ideology of, yes, we and these people, we are equal, but they can't speak up.
Borderlines on Nigeria Info every Friday at 4 p.m. The world is changing. Don't just watch, understand it. Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
And it's good afternoon, Lagos, Nigeria, the diaspora, wherever you're joining us from, the UK, Jerusalem, even in Palestine. And now, even in Egypt. Welcome to Borderlines, the only show that takes you beyond borders. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. So, before I bring on our guest, our wonderful guest, I get excited when we have especially smart females. Anyway, you all know, well, you all didn't know that I was going to be going, but I did go to Egypt on Sunday. As you all know, President Trump was supposed to be signing, what I can only describe as a razzmatazz. So you had people's lives, the lives of the Palestinians, whom, by the way, we must never forget, have been under a Nakba, an occupation, a legal occupation, violent subjugation, and you just add anything else to that, that's exactly it. But fundamentally, they've been living under an apartheid regime. Or for decades and decades. Now, for the last 2 years, we have watched a genocide. We've watched a live stream genocide unfold in front of us. And as you know, this show was one of the first, especially in Nigeria. In fact, I think some still don't call it a genocide in Nigeria. On Borderlines, we do. Because we know what a genocide is. Yours truly knows what a genocide is. I've had to go and study it. And if you still disagree with me, then you've been under a rock. So, the Palestinians have been going through all of this for the last 2 years. And indeed, I'm in Gaza. Of course, we mustn't forget the West Bank. Now, finally, we get to a point of a ceasefire. I think this is either the third, perhaps, or the fourth ceasefire. They're calling it the end of the war. President Trump, Donald Trump, flies to Egypt. And I tell you, he didn't just fly into Egypt. It was an earth-roaring, shaking, almighty arrival into Egypt. Why do I say that? We were there, and Air Force One, one of the most incredible things you'll ever see, is Air Force One. Air Force One in the sky, flanked by 6, perhaps 8 or so Egyptian fighter jets, was a sight to behold. So President Trump lands, and everybody knew he landed. Like I said, Egypt must have shaken quite a bit. And he has, He has a press conference with the leader of Egypt, Sisi. Then there's the sort of kiss, handshake, and photograph session, and then we had the signing ceremony, because that's what we would call it, a signing ceremony. What I can say to you is, as somebody, given that I'm a journalist and I was there, the mood wasn't what you would expect. Let me just say that. But I have a guest, and I'm going to be discussing this with her. I don't know whether she was there or whether she wasn't, but at the very least, she's an expert on this issue. Her name is Professor Sarah Eltantawi. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Perfect.
Excellent. Prof, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It is such an honor to be here, and I love Nigeria. I just want to say that, one of my favorite countries, and I am so happy when you called me. So thank you very much for being one of the first to call this a genocide, and for the work that you're doing, and for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, given that you say you love Nigeria, then I can only imagine you're as crazy as the rest of us. That's what I can say. But let me start before we get into the big meat of it all. This last week, so from Monday to Wednesday, and for me, it ended on Wednesday. What did you make of all that glitz? And we can only call it, it was sycophantic. It was vacuous. It was, at times, it was pedestrian, but at other times, it seemed celebratory. What was there to celebrate?
Right. Well, I think that the fact that there was so much glitz is the story, right? So this is, as you mentioned, there's been at least 3 ceasefires before this, but without the glitz. So is the fact that there was so much ceremony around this, there were so many European leaders there was so much, the role of Egypt is a little bit different in this one too, and we can come back to that. But the fact that there was so much international attention on this, and Trump personally attended and said, okay, that's the end. Okay, let's see if that makes a difference. Let's see what role that plays. Yeah.
And did it make a difference at all? Do you think it made any difference? Did it give it the sort of power punch that it needed, or was it really just a case of here's another stage for President Trump to strut about and be, the peacock of the moment?
Yeah. Yes, it was definitely a chance for Trump to strut about and be the peacock of the moment. We can't deny that at all. Did it make a difference? So, okay, the facts of the case are that Israel has already violated the ceasefire several times, even in the past few days. So in that sense, we have a problem. There is more to what happened on Monday than the ceasefire. There's a 20-point plan. And there are a lot of countries, Gulf countries, other Arab states, European countries, and the United States who have pledged to take particular steps and play a particular role in the reconstruction of Gaza. So in spite of these violations of the ceasefire, I think I can't completely answer the question, because the question is, are these other points are they going to follow through on these other points? We still have to see.
So we have, like you said, the Gulf countries, but of course, you had 4 countries sign to that 20-point plan, which was initially 21. I keep wondering what happened to the one. I haven't found out what that one is. Perhaps the one was the most important one, but somehow it started with 21 points and it's now been turned into 20 points. So you had 4 countries, including Turkey, who signed onto this 20-point plan. But the 2 countries that were involved, indeed, Hamas, representing Palestine, and Israel, the occupier, neither of them signed on to that. So again, I was there and I was left wondering, what is there to celebrate? In Nigeria, we would call it shaving my head in my absence. Were the heads of the Palestinians being shaved in their absence, and by extension, giving their hair as hair extensions to Israel? Or was there a deal for the Palestinians that we just don't know about, that you saw? What was it beyond the exchanging of hostages?
I think that from what I can tell, the answer is both. I think that there is definitely a sense in which the Palestinians are left out of their own negotiations. And as the Palestinian negotiator, Diana Boutou, says, we are the only occupied people. She's speaking about the Palestinians. We are the only occupied people who have to negotiate the security of our occupier. Actually, Hanan Ashrawi said that. And we're the only people who have to negotiate the end to our own famine. And we have to be the ones responsible for so-called de-radicalization. So it's not Israel that needs to de-radicalize, humanize the Palestinians, bring to justice their soldiers who routinely dehumanize the Palestinians, or soldiers, their leaders who routinely dehumanize. No, it's the Palestinians only who need de-radicalization. The 20-point plan, to be fair, does say something about both communities needing to undergo schooling and other programs to learn to live with the other. So to be fair, it does say that. So I think there is a sense in which definitely this is not a plan that centers the Palestinian experience or even puts the Palestinians on an equal footing to the Israelis. So yes, that's for sure. On the other hand, there's also, it's clear that Hamas was consulted. Trump said in Egypt that when he was complimenting President Sisi of Egypt, he said, "Oh, he was great to work with because Hamas actually listens to him and actually respects his leadership and respects Egypt." Usually Trump, when he speaks, like we as Americans know this, when he speaks off the cuff, off of the prepared remarks, that's when you get the truer statements. So I took from that President Sisi had a lot to do with that there were negotiations with Hamas. And of course that makes sense because there is aid now coming into Gaza and there have been some shifts on the ground. So I think the answer is both, that to some extent the Palestinians, of course, especially Hamas, were consulted. Mahmoud Abbas, the role of Mahmoud Abbas is also in question. We've heard that he was also consulted, but then again, Mahmoud Abbas really suffers from, this is the president of the Palestinian Authority. He really suffers from a credibility problem, especially in Gaza, but even also in the West Bank. But rumor has it that he was also consulted. But nowhere near the level that you would expect if the Palestinians were actually recognized as essentially equal to the Israelis.
Yes. And let me use this as a segue into your work. You've written about the moral dimensions of political decision making. What do you think, what does it mean to speak to peace when justice remains absent? Because indeed, Diana Butcher is correct. Again, I've had to keep reminding people that journalism, especially in this particular moment, is about accuracy, whether that accuracy is comfortable or uncomfortable. Diana Butcher is correct in the sense that the oppressed is being asked to negotiate for the safety and the security of their oppressors without any conversation to justice. So what do you think that means when, the constant conversation, the word, the headline is to speak of peace, but not to speak of justice, almost as if Israel hasn't done anything wrong?
Right. Yeah, that's a very deep question. And, the way that I look at it is, of course, many of our allies in this issue have taken the position of this is complete capitulation. Why even go to this charade? Why even go through this? Because I agree with what you just said, or I think the implication of what you just said, which is that without justice, this really isn't a peace deal. And in fact, it's not a peace deal, right? And it's not, or what it's really not, here's what it's not. It's not an end to the conflict. It's just not an end to the conflict. So, and that's clear, And so I am politically pragmatic enough to say, okay, if all of these world leaders want to come together and spotlight this issue and promise, I'll say I am happy that there are pledges to rebuild Gaza with the participation of with the Palestinians in their own land. We were terrified for 2 years that they would ethnically cleanse the entire enclave since nobody was stopping Israel from doing anything. So if you look at it politically, this document is showing us that at least that option has now been taken off the table, at least in terms of direct political sanction, right? So I'm of the mind of this is not the end of the conflict and this is not real justice, but let's essentially call the bluff. Okay, come to Egypt, let's do the signs and the peace deal. Let's be cooperative. If you want to take any steps in the positive direction, okay, let's be there for that. But so we can, I think we should, I think if there's any kind of movement toward moving this conflict forward, we should be there. But we should also know that this conflict is not going to end until there's justice for the Palestinians and until the real plight of the Palestinians has been known to the world and until Israel has to face accountability, which is really the factor that has been missing for the last 70 years. No accountability.
Indeed.
And this doesn't work unless there's accountability.
Indeed. And so I'm glad you mentioned about how this is not the end of the genocide. Well, it might have stopped the bombing. I think we can look at it as a positive pause, but however, it's not the end of the occupation. It is not the emancipation that the Palestinians have been fighting for the last 70 odd years. Now, could that be, and you also mentioned impunity, could it be a case that to talk about the end of the occupation would mean the Americans, the Europeans, would have to now start talking about justice, about the impunity umbrella that Israel has been afforded all this time? Could it be that? Or is it perhaps maybe even a little bit more complicated than the way I'm putting it?
No, I think it's actually even more basic, which is that if we're going to talk about the end of the occupation, we would need to get the US and Europe to stop funding the occupation, to stop sanctioning the occupation, to stop covering for the occupation at the United Nations, which the US has done for 50 years. So in the Middle East, it's just now I can't really even explain the level to which the US especially and Europe has no credibility on this issue. I mean, you're talking about wanting to do a peace deal when you're literally funding the occupation. So, yeah, and there's no talk. I mean, we have a bill that's being considered in Congress to, for example, for United States officials to officially rename the West Bank to Judea and Samaria. That's just a small example. Okay, if you call it Judea and Samaria, that is the language of not only the occupation, but the extreme right wing in Israel. So you are taking the side of not just keeping the occupation going, but of the greater Israel plan, which is to expand the occupation beyond even what Israel has done up until this point. So there's a lot of contradictory kind of political flows going on right now. And the problem is with President Trump, unfortunately, you just get the sense that he doesn't understand the conflict as an individual. He doesn't understand the conflict. And does Marco Rubio really understand the conflict? This is what I don't understand. Okay, intellectually, do they understand the conflict, even from the point of view of the Palestinians? In the case of President Trump, I don't think he does. Does Marco Rubio understand what's really going on? I'm not sure. I think it's probably a pretty superficial grasp. I think about a quote from Michelle Obama that is very helpful. I think she said it in an interview, or she may have written it in one of her books, but she said, I was first lady for 8 years, and I sat in all of these board meetings. I sat in the Aspen Institute. I sat in the rooms with the biggest leaders in the world. And what you realize, and I'm quoting her now, what you realize is they're not that smart. Okay, and so I keep that in mind because I'm kind of looking at some of these people who are representing this issue and talking about this issue from in the U.S. negotiating side, and I just feel like I don't think you have a grasp of the basic facts, or I think that you take cliff notes, like just notes from essentially Israel, and you consider that to be fact. There's really not much of an attempt to come to any kind of even objective understanding of the conflict. Excuse me, you're probably hearing that in the background.
What is that call for prayer we're hearing?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. Where
Yes.
are you?
I'm in Cairo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So we were
yes.
both in Egypt together. Oh, I was in
Yes.
Sharm el Sheikh. Okay. So,
Yes.
it's interesting you say that. They probably, could it be deliberate? Is it a case as they don't want to know? They don't care to know. There is no need. There is no demand for them to care about the details, because to care about, to even consider the rights of the Palestinians would mean you have to care about the details. And in order to care about the details, it would mean you have to educate yourself on the history. Indeed, even the history before 1948. And indeed, somebody like President Trump, who's got, the concentration, I don't know, of a fly, forgive me, could it be that's just a little bit too much,
Sure. I mean, I think you would pull that string, and then I think at the end of the string, you have to do things like humanize Arabs. Look at the way that Islamophobia has been used as a tool for imperialism, American imperialism in the region, and for Israel and Israel expansionism. You would have to look at the domestic politics of the United States and how people who are giving the Palestinian side are being silenced and villainized and fired and treated horribly. You would really have to, I think, for me, I wonder if it's as kind of like elite Western kind of imperial thinking is very threatened by the idea of considering people in the Middle East as equal human beings. Because I personally don't think they do. I mean, I don't.
And it's interesting that you say that, because as you were talking, one of the things that comes into my head, and it also takes us to this, it's been 4 days of this ceasefire, is the sort of the demonization, is the only word I can think of the Muslim man stroke Arab man stroke Palestinian man.
Oh yeah.
We've had this thing where, there was a time when the whole world was, Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to defend itself. Albeit legally, according to international law, Israel didn't have a right to defend itself. But we were told that over and over again, and it became a chorus. However, what then began to happen is, and again, correct me if I noticed the change of rhetorics and voices where, so to condemn Israel, they would only talk about women and children. It was women and children. Oh, Palestinian women, look at what you're doing to the children. And then I started to think to myself, well, is it that the men don't matter? Or is there this thing since 9/11 where the Muslim man, the Arab man, indeed the Palestinian, who are all part of West Asia, is it their fault? Is it that we're supposed to be afraid of them because every single Arab is, as one Zionist person that I know called them, barbaric? Or, is it something much more than that?
It's a great point. Actually, a friend of mine who's a Palestinian scholar wrote an article that is called Palestinian Men Are Human Too.
Yeah.
Right on the point that you're making, which is that if there's going to be any sympathy for the Palestinians at all, it is always framed as women and children. And indeed, it is particularly barbaric to be bombing women and children constantly on a daily basis from the sky. Yes, agreed. But the figure, it is so true that the figure of the Arab and the Muslim male has been systematically dehumanized in the United States since 9/11, especially as a disposable body, as a figure that is threatening and that is violent and whose lives really do not matter. So it's been in the media, it is in our it's in our movies, It's in to some extent in our education system. It's in a lot of churches. It's in a lot of synagogues. It's, and even there's even into Muslims. I mean, that's a whole other story that we could talk about. That's really a phenomena. So, so that is very, very, very pervasive, and it is a very important tool that allows Western imperial powers to have done what it's done in this region for the last 100 years or more.
I mean, you've had, you have language, words, Arabic words, which again have been turned into negative word. I meet somebody that's called, Osama, and immediately I'm afraid for them, because I think to us, how do you go through the airports? How do you get through the airports? My cousin, who was growing up, in the States, so he was working in the States at the time, and his name was Abu Bakr 9/11, and he talked about the hell that he went through just from having that name. It's how do you navigate that? Because you are a professor of religion. How does one navigate that? What is it about the Islamic religion that is often turned into this negative thing that you must be afraid of because Muhammad had a 6-year-old wife and all of this stuff? Are the Muslims themselves partly responsible? Is it terrorists, Islamic terrorists that are responsible? Or is it that they've chosen to adopt the actions of Islamic terrorism and project it onto every Muslim person?
Oof,
I'm asking big questions, sorry.
Yeah, great questions. It's, again, my own internalized Islamophobia is coming up. And that's something that I've put on the table for myself recently because, can I let him finish?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
This is the sundown prayer.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're finished here.
Yeah.
Okay. So, this question of Islamic terrorism. We cannot justify people going and killing innocent civilians. We can't. We can't justify it according to Islamic law, actually, at all. We can't justify it ethically. So I don't justify it. I do not approve of it. At the same time, I did not use the word but. I'm saying new thoughts. When you look at just the sheer amount of violence that has been committed by, let's say, American and Israeli power, militaries, this is now numbers. It utterly dwarfs what we are calling so-called Islamic terrorism. I'm saying so-called because really, actually, there's nothing Islamic about it. It's against Islamic law. Okay, Muslim people are doing it in the name of Islam, I suppose, but all of us can say whatever we want to say about anything, and it doesn't make it so. So that's how I look at that. But Western power and its violence toward this region is, absolutely dwarfs anything that we can call Islamic terrorism. Now, it's not the Olympics, it's not a competition, but the problem is that I am being asked as an American to think of that form of violence that we call Islamic terrorism as the most barbaric and worst form of violence in the entire world. And I'm being asked not to even mention the fact that 1 million Iraqis were killed in the Iraq War, that hundreds of thousands of Afghanis were killed, that probably hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were just killed, that the scale of the Iranians who were just killed in the attacks, the scale of violence against Muslims is enormous, and I'm not even allowed to not only mourn those lives and consider them equal, I'm usually not even allowed to talk about it. Someone will accuse you of whataboutism or of trying to they'll say you're trying to justify terrorism in some way. No, I'm not trying to justify terrorism. I'm not trying to say that it is right to go and kill innocent civilians. Of course not. I just also think it's not right for anyone to kill innocent civilians, including your militaries.
Yeah.
And I refuse to say that those lives that were lost in the Middle East don't matter as much as the lives that are lost as a result of terrorism. That's what I refuse. I will not play into that dehumanization. So I will not, if somebody asks me to condemn terrorism, I'm happy to do that, but I will also have to, as an ethical duty, mention all of the other violence against Arabs and Muslims in the same sentence. I will not simply condemn one side. And that, that can get you in some trouble with people who want to make trouble, but that is the ethically correct thing to do.
Indeed. So let's talk about this moment again before I go back to your work. One of the things that we've seen in the last few days is a new form of violence taking place in Gaza. There is no authority anymore. The 20-point plan said they would put in some sort of governance, but nothing has been put in. We've now seen the clan, which to most people, they don't know who the clans are, the gangs, if you like, the criminal gangs taking over on the street. You've seen a video of Hamas actually assassinating or extrajudicial killing of the Abu Shabaab clan and others. One of the things that I'd like you to talk about is when I looked at that and I saw that and I read up on it, one of the things that I saw was reminded me of was the way a lot of the anti-Nazi resistance in World War II responded to Nazi sympathizers and those who supported the Nazis. Is that what we're seeing right now in Gaza?
That is an interesting question. I think that's probably Hamas's perspective, that those gangs were working with Israel. We do know that, Netanyahu admitted that he's funding those groups.
Yeah.
So that's on record. But, I would hesitate maybe to make that analogy simply because I'm not sure of all of the details of. Sometimes when you say, this is the thing, when you say I worked with this group, what does that mean? I have to know more details. It could be that I brought bread one day to I don't know, so I'm a little bit, and also I have Palestinian colleagues and friends and comrades who have explained to me in detail, like how problematic and scary the targeting of so-called collaborators can be. So I'm a little bit like, I need to know more details about that.
Let's talk about empire and memory. Much of your work engages with colonial legacies and their afterlives. So do you see President Trump's initiative as part of that longer story, the West's and their ongoing attempt to manage the region rather than truly understand the region? For a start, they called it the Middle East. Let's start from there, right? Most people don't know it had nothing to do with that, but go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you. Just to clarify that for people who might be confused about why that's a problem. If the Middle East, if you think about it, the Middle East, okay, from whose perspective is this landmass the middle of the East? The answer is London. Right? That is why that term is considered to be a colonial term, and people prefer West Asia to describe this region a little more accurately. Is this a continuation of colonial legacies? Absolutely. There's no attempt to critique or hide that. This is the thing with democratic administrations, they make more of an attempt to hide these things. We're here for peace. We're here to, they would use different rhetoric to do essentially the same thing. With the Trump administration, there's absolutely no, there's no attempt, I'll say a couple of things about this. On one hand, rhetorically, there's no attempt to hide that they believe themselves to be a superior people that are just trying to manage this unruly region. I will say though that this is just a little bit of an off-the-cuff
Please go ahead.
observation, but the Republicans, like someone like Trump, really respects money, right? And really respects business. And I get the feeling that he, as much as Trump is capable of respect, he really does respect the Gulf states, right? Like when he meets the Emir of Qatar and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, those are good people to him. That's his definition of like good people. And he sees them as equals, and he's doing business and he's doing deals, as he puts it. And it's interesting. The Democrats, I almost want to say that they'd be happy to do business maybe, but it would be more under the cover and almost like still a little more racist, if you can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that for someone like Trump and the Republicans, the money really gets rid of a large amount of the racism. Whereas with the Democrats, you feel like it's deeper in a way, or that they're more fearful or something like that. That's just an observation. That maybe Republican and Democrat is too generalizing here. It could just be the Trump administration versus the Biden administration. We could say that. So I would say that. But this idea, I mean, we have a long way to go if the goal, which it should be, is decolonization. And what does decolonization mean in this region? It means that this region is actually independent, and it is not always having to understand its fate vis-a-vis large imperial powers. So for the most of the last century, that's been the United States, but also it's been the Soviet Union at other times. How do we have an independent region? Now, all of the attempts that have been made to have an independent region have been violently shut down by the West. Pan-Arabism as a movement was violently shut down. So
let me ask that question though. I'm glad you mentioned Pan-Arabism. Of course,
Pan-Africanism.
Yeah, yes, and this is the thing, because that's the collective that brings everybody together to say we are going to stand against, these Western interlopers and oppressors and those who cause issues between us and set us against each other. When you talk about that, and for me, the moment you meant, I'm thinking that was possibly the fear, and you may correct me, about the axis of resistance. I'm thinking to myself, that is possibly the idea, although Iran called it the axis of resistance, what they were meaning was Pan-Arabism, something that the likes of, Edward Said has always pushed for, and it never happens. But now you have, a bit like in Africa, you've got the young leaders, the young Gulf Arab leaders who are not about that Pan-Arabism. No. They're just about winning the West. We've got the money. They like money. Give them money. Let them protect us against our people. Not because there's a bogeyman that's coming to arrest us. So talk to us about, monarchical rule versus democratic rule. And and because the moment you mentioned that, it came to my head. Yeah,
another great question. I heard, I'm going to try to be fair about the Gulf states for a moment here, because I've been thinking about this, because I heard a theory recently that the Gulf states, it's true that they have been relying on the United States for their security, and it's like security against who? And like you said, it's their own people. In the case of the Gulf, it's often Iran is like their big fear. But I've heard a theory recently, especially in the last 2 years, the United States has shown that it is actually not a good security guarantor for the Gulf. Like, look what happened in Qatar, right? Yeah. Israel went in and assassinated these Qatari leaders. So, and of course, that would not have happened without the knowledge of the United States. And we know this, right? So I've heard a theory that the Gulf states, they are rising economically, and they have this vision of how they want to develop their economies and develop and sort of like spread their influence regionally. And the theory here that I've heard, which I don't know how I feel about it yet, but the idea is that, well, the Gulf states didn't help with Palestine militarily, but what they did was they used the economic tools that they had to bring the Trump administration over to their side so that they could facilitate something like this 20-point plan. That is the most generous interpretation I can give you of maybe some of the strategy from the Gulf. But you're absolutely right that, I mean, and it's been on record, bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, they are not interested in anything other than their own countries. And the sad part is that, Egypt has come out under a lot of criticism for not militarily intervening to help the Palestinians in Gaza. And if you talk to people in Egypt, especially in the military class, they will say, look at our memories. In 1967, when we went in to liberate Palestinian land, and we were attacked by Israel, and then we were attacked by, the Americans went and helped Israel. We found ourselves absolutely alone on the battlefield. Even the other Arab countries that started out with us were gone, and we were alone. And Egypt cannot take on the United States and Israel. It's just not possible. So that is that's just a small example to kind of give us an idea of why some of these states feel like we cannot afford to do anything but look at ourselves. Yeah. And then you have countries like Egypt, which is, still, thank God, a stable country. And it looks to like what happened in Syria. Like the moment you allow these other proxy groups to come into your country and fight their battles inside your territory, that is basically, it's a matter of time before your country fissures and splits. This is like the mentality. And so I can imagine if I'm being as fair as I can be to the Gulf states, that they might be thinking something like that as well, that they want to make sure that they stay focused.
Indeed.
But it's still, though, you can't imagine a good future for this region outside of some kind of cooperation, economic, political, whatever you want to call it. This region must be thought of as a whole and have some kind of a regional identity. Yeah,
indeed. You can call 0201. We only have 10 minutes left, and I can make use of those 10 minutes, but I do have an obligation to answer your calls. 0201-277-0993, or the female line is 0201-465-7190. You can send a message to WhatsApp number 0809-597-5805, and they've already started calling. I'm coming to your calls now. Why am I not seeing? Okay, there you are. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, merchant man. Very quickly, go ahead. What's your question?
Yeah, I really want her to. Good afternoon to your guest.
Her name is Sarah. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, Sarah. I want you to elucidate more on the reason Trump's administration is not really ready to. The Gulf state is not really ready to back the
Palestinians.
Palestinian people.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Militarily.
Thank you.
Yes, I want her to elucidate more on it. Yes.
Thank you. Right, Sarah, hold on to that question. Please write it down if you can. Sure. They've already started calling. Short, very quickly, people. Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Cecile.
Good evening, Emmanuel. Very quickly, please.
Yeah, two questions, quickly.
One.
Number one, what is the Israeli lobby? I mean, what will it look like going forward? Because in countries from America, to Britain, to France, if you are not aligned with Israel,
right.
Israeli government, you
Thank
are seen as not going to make it politically.
Thank you.
Number two.
Oh, Emmanuel, quickly. Oh, okay. We don't have time.
Israeli embodying empowered, financially empowered Hamas, to serve as a rival to other Palestinian governments. Now, the Israeli is now empowering other gangs against Hamas. Should the Israeli citizens be worried because they are at the receiving end of a powerful Hamas?
Okay,
because
thank
tomorrow
you.
the gangs, can be another Hamas. Should the Israeli citizens be worried and begin to speak up against what the Israeli government is doing?
Thank you very much. Sarah, I knew it. The moment I open up the lines, is going. I can give you a minute to answer those two because I'm going to I have to pick up other calls.
Okay. Well, you're very informed callers. So
they are.
They are, yes. So the first question was about why doesn't Trump support the Palestinians? Great question. I think the answer is it's really the domestic politics of the United States. It's the amount of, there's a carrot and stick element. So there is a lot of aid and money that is given to politicians that support Israel, according to their definition of supporting Israel. There's a lot of positive incentive to support Israel. And then there's the stick, there's a lot of punishment if you do not support Israel.
Okay.
You could lose your congressional seat. You'll be called a bigot. You'll have a lot of problems if you are seen. This is starting to change, but generally, if you are not seen to support Israel, plus there's that what they call Judeo-Christian civilization, and this whole idea that somehow, especially the Christian majority, has to support Israel as part of their religion, which is a whole other radio show. And then the question was, shouldn't the Israeli public be worried about empowering groups outside of Hamas? Yes, it should.
That's a straightforward answer. Thank you. Right. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes, very quickly.
Oh, my name is Sam.
Go ahead, Sam, very quickly. 30 seconds.
Okay, we are complaining of Israel as being genocidal. 1,000 people killed by Hamas. Is it not genocide as well?
Okay, thank you.
Is it possible to say Israel alone is committing genocide without saying
that Hamas did the same on October 7th? Good question. Thank you. I'll let Sarah answer that. Stay listening. Thank you. Right, let me pick up one more. Hello. Oops. Hello.
Hi, Titi. How are you?
I'm very well, Titilope. You only get one question. It's short.
Yeah. The post-war Gaza security arrangement dictates that.
I need you to speak up. We can't hear you.
I mean, the post-war Gaza peace talk demands that Turkey, Egypt, and UAE will provide internal security arrangements for the Gazian people right now.
Yeah.
With the problem between Hamas and the other rival gangs.
And the gangs,
Do you think it will be easy? Because before that can happen, the UN security will have to sanction that at their security meeting. How easy would that be at the security, given the issue of rivalry between the dissenting parties?
Okay.
For instance, America versus China, Russia, and the co.
Right.
Thank you.
I think he's talking about the UNSC that's due to take place. I can't answer any more calls, people. Sorry. I know you should have been calling earlier. And I'm selfish like that. Right. I'm going to give you a minute to answer that. They're already giving me strange looks in the studio.
Hear the second question.
Right. No, Titi Lokwe, he was talking about we do tend to always have a problem with his voice. He was talking about the issues going on between Hamas and the gangs. And the fact that the security is supposed to be a joint security force that's going to be on the ground, which is going to be presented at the UNSC, I believe, next week. How easy do you think that's going to be? I'm going to give you a minute.
Okay, I'll start with the second question. If Israel allows it, I mean, really, Israel is in control of that. They're the ones who tend to obstruct these processes, and they're the ones in control of the border. So if Israel is serious about this and allows these peacekeeping forces in, then we'll see. In terms of the first question about the 1,000 people that were killed by Hamas, I will just go back to what I said in the beginning, which is that it is absolutely condemnable to target and attack civilians. And I condemn it, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. And at the same time, I will also say that those lives are to be mourned, and they are not worth more than the lives of the Palestinians who were killed before that time and after that time. So the way that, and the reason I keep emphasizing that is because we are being kind of encouraged, especially in the West, to think of that event of October 7th as, a one-time event. One of the worst things that's happened in history. And when the reality is that it's actually part of a cycle of violence in which thousands and thousands of Palestinians have been killed, displaced, and depossessed over the past 70 years. So I condemn the entire cycle of violence.
Thank you. Right. Lagos, Nigeria, wherever you're listening to me from. My guest was Professor Sarah Eltantawi. She's the scholar of religion, politics, and moral reasoning in the modern Middle East. She's also the author of Sharia on Trial, Northern Nigeria's Islamic Revolution, a landmark work that probes how law, faith, and resistance are reimagined in the shadow of colonial legacies and global power. And yes, before you write and say, why didn't you ask her anything about Nigeria? She's going to be back to talk about Sharia on Trial. Right, Sarah?
Absolutely. I would love to.
Thank you so very, very much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
Benga is probably writing you already, so we can book that, because there's this whole thing going on about genocide, Christian genocide in Nigeria. So we'd like to get, as an expert on Northern Nigeria, we would certainly be getting you back ASAP.
That sounds great. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful show.
Thank you. Enjoy Cairo.
Thank you.
Stories are waiting to be lived. Family reunions in Calabar, big deals in Lagos, new adventures in Owerri.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.